Breaking news, breaking news. The Steelers' first round draft pick of 2 years ago is now a Philadelphia Eagle. Kenny Pickett is no longer a Pittsburgh Steeler. And I must say, I am not mad, but I am shocked.
Man.
Go ahead.
Well, Omar Khan let us get some rest this offseason. Like, it's Friday at 3 o'clock. You just pop home from work. I'm writing up an article on Graham Barton, Duke's offensive lineman, just trying to kill some time. And before you know it, the biggest news probably of the offseason, I mean, with, consideration to Russell Wilson, of course, maybe A and B, second biggest news drops. And yeah, it's a bit of a stunner, but we talked about this the last time when we went live, that, I thought there was a chance this could happen because of the way last season ended with Kenny Pickett. The reports that came out in regard to him being displeased about how the season ended because he was replaced by Mason Rudolph, of course, once he was healthy. And Mason went on to win some games. Kenny never saw the light of day again. And, wasn't even really heard from. Didn't do a press conference, no interviews postseason. So holy macaroni, man. He's going to the other side of the state to back up Jalen Hurts. It's not like he's going to be a starter, right? He's went from a backup on the west side of PA to a backup on the east side of PA in the matter of minutes here.
Yeah, and I think the craziest thing about it is that the Steelers, that's why it's all smoke and mirrors. And that's what we talked about, when we're texting and off air, is that the Steelers aren't going to come out and say, hey, we don't believe in the guy that we drafted 2 years ago to be our franchise quarterback. Like, they're just, even the Steelers, it's like, hey, we drafted Artie Burns. We drafted Devin Bush. It didn't work out. They're not going to make a statement. Yeah, they were all busts.
But, you know what it does? It devalues that player to another team. That's what it does.
Yes.
If you come out and say, we're unsure. Yeah, I mean, if you come out and say we're unsure about a certain player, what the hell is another team going to feel about that player?
Exactly right. And, I'm sure that the Steelers organization, they're a classy organization. I'm sure that they want Kenny Pickett to succeed. And the biggest thing that really baffles me about it is I don't understand how Kenny Pickett, after what he did these past 2 seasons, how anyone would be on board with him going into this season, fully, invested in him. You would have to be a fool. And I mean, this is what the Steelers do. Omar Khan, this is what they do. They evaluate players and say, okay, it's either we can take another shot on this. And man, I'm like I said, you said, we're just trying to get some rest here. You're sitting here typing up a sports article and breaking news. Kenny Pickett. You always got to double check it, but when it comes from ESPN, it's
Schefter. I mean, I'll take it a step further. And listen, we get that every NFL player should have the utmost confidence in themselves. They should think they're the best player on the football field, right? But you mentioned how can Steeler fans go into the season feeling like Kenny Pickett deserves, this opportunity. I don't know how Kenny Pickett could go into this season feeling like he deserves the opportunity. Sometimes you have to step back and be a little bit of a realist. The way he handled the end of last season, there were a lot of conflicting reports. I'm going to actually shout out a guy that I would never shout out, and that's Mark Madden, because he was the one who broke this story about Kenny Pickett refusing to dress right after the Bengals game, heading into the Seattle game. Listen, we were told by pretty damn good sources, I'm not going to throw any names out there, and we didn't report this because you don't want to hurt any feelings, that was the case, that was true. And this gives some legs to it because, like I said, we didn't hear from Pickett all offseason. You bring in Russell Wilson. I'm sure he was just as pissed about that as he was whenever the Mason Rudolph situation was unfolding. So my best guess is he goes to management and says, trade me, right? What does Mike Tomlin always say? We want volunteers, not hostages. Kenny Pickett felt like he was being held hostage last year whenever Mason Rudolph took the starting job from him due to injury. Whether that's right or wrong, he did feel that way. There are some people out there who would play devil's advocate, and I do understand their perspective, saying, hey, you fire Matt Canada finally, Kenny plays well against the Bengals, and then he loses his job. Yeah, I mean, I get that perspective. But at the same time, the guy wasn't playing well enough to keep his job. And that's why Russell Wilson got here in the first place.
Yeah, and I think I'm not sure. I think it was Jerry Dulac who just tweeted it out. I guess Russell Wilson, when, he came and he said, doing what Russell Wilson does, reaching out and just saying, hey, we're trying to get better each day. And I wonder if Pickett responded to that text or what his response was. I know Kenny Pickett. He's a great guy. I do wish him the best. It was a blessing to watch him at Pitt and bring that ACC championship and raise that banner. It just all around great stuff. But the NFL is a totally different animal. We've said it before and we'll say it until we're blue in the face. They don't care about your feelings. And if you're not producing on the field, you really have to just, at this point, I think that the Steelers, I want to say, and to our viewers listening, thank you guys very much. And make sure you do subscribe to the Sick Podcast, Steeler Crazy. We're cranking out 2 shows every week all year round. Great guests, analysts. We're going to be covering the draft coming up and have a lot of guys. Give us a like. But back to, I kind of lost track of what I was saying, but I just feel like this new era for the Steelers, I think that they're finally listening to the fans a little bit, and not in a sense where, Tomlin always says, we love our passionate fan base, but like enough is enough at this point. And this new era, I'm not critiquing it anymore. I'm kind of just going to sit back and, see how it transpires. But right now on paper, man, I'm telling you what, this team's going to be dangerous. No pun intended.
Omar Khan is a madman, and I want to touch on 2 subjects for anybody watching out there. The first subject is the compensation. If you're joining us right now and you didn't hear, for one, Kenny Pickett has been traded across the state to the Philadelphia Eagles. He was traded for a pick swap. The Steelers traded pick 120 as well as, looks like 2 7th-rounders. Or hold on, let me check that. Yep, the Steelers traded 120 for pick 98 this year, so they bump up 22 spots, and they acquired 2 2025 7th-round picks. So here's the hot rumor that everybody should be speculating about now. Do they now turn around and take some of that draft equity and trade for Justin Fields? That's a name that has not moved yet, right? The Steelers still want a young quarterback under Russell Wilson. He's on a 1-year deal. He's obviously long in the tooth. And who knows what he'll provide still. He's still a little bit of an unknown. We can't walk in here and think, yeah, he's going to win multiple Super Bowls.
It'd be worse than what we had.
Yeah, he can't recapture, though, what he had 3 years ago. We don't know that for a fact, even though he did play well last year. But wouldn't it be the chess move of all time to trade Kenny Pickett, get some more equity, which they did, and then flip those picks for Justin Fields and immediately overhaul a quarterback room that needed it? They have 1 quarterback on the roster. It's Russell Wilson. It's a 36-year-old on a 1-year deal. They have 1 quarterback, so you need to add 2 more still. Justin Fields has to be on the radar. The Bears want to get him out of town. I wouldn't be shocked if Omar Khan pulls the heist of the century here and finds a way now to utilize some of this draft equity and bring Justin Fields to Pittsburgh. The 2 guys everybody wanted this offseason. Let's get Russell, let's get Justin. Maybe we get both of them.
Nothing. I say this, the older we get, is I've seen it all. We're in our 30s now. We're no spring chicken, but we're still young. But I would say that at this point, like I'm putting nothing past Omar Khan, and I'm just using this as a scenario. Okay, I wouldn't be surprised if the next thing we do is sign Odell Beckham Jr. That's the last thing that I want to do. But I'm just saying, like, that's where I am. Like Justin Simmons, anything after signing Patrick Queen. Okay. Like I was joking about that with someone when I was talking, and then when it actually happened, I was like, okay, Omar Khan has gone crazy. He's in the lab. And at this point, you just have to sit back in your recliner and really just appreciate it, because I really think that, hey, we want to win a Super Bowl.
I want to share this Jerry Dulac tweet. He said the Steelers made the move because of the way Pickett was poorly handling the arrival of Russell Wilson, according to sources. That came on the heels of Pickett's behavior last season when he refused to dress as the emergency 3rd quarterback in Seattle in Week 17. So everything here is corroborated. Everything. That We thought last year that we heard last year from a few different people that a lot of Kenny Pickett defenders, came and said, "Oh, he's the best guy in the world. This would never happen." But yeah, I mean, he acted a little bit like he was Peyton Manning after this happened. So, you said it. Want him to succeed, but at the same time, maybe a little bit of a sour taste in both the Steelers' mouth and his mouth, and fans as well, as he departs to the the city of brotherly love. We'll see how they treat him if he comes in and doesn't play well.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. I mean, but he's not even going to play. You're going to tell me he's going to start over Jalen Hurts? I mean,
no, there's 0% chance, but he could. Obviously guys get hurt, so he could come in and play after that. He has a great running game, great defense, but he wasn't traded to a team that needs a starter.
I'll say this.
So the NFL felt the same way about him that the Steelers felt the same, right? That the Steelers felt, right? Or they would have traded him to a team that needed a starter and probably found their way into a better pick than a third-round pick. So I don't know. I can't even say the words fresh start.
So Kenny Pickett will be the preseason MVP once again in Philadelphia, as he was this year for the Steelers, and we see how that transpired.
Yeah, you hate to shit on a guy, right? And we don't mean to sit here and throw jabs. We've had good experiences, and you've had good encounters with Kenny. He is a good guy. He's a hard worker. He's a good leader, right? But he didn't act like it towards the end of last season. Maybe it's something he'll ultimately regret, when he looks back at his career and says, hey, if I handle that a little better, if I don't fall into that hostage scenario, and if I was a little bit more of a volunteer, then my career would have turned out differently. The Steelers would have stuck with me after Russell Wilson, because it felt like that's what they would have wanted to do in an ideal scenario. I think he's a perfect backup. I really do. I think that's why the Eagles took a shot on him. He gives me some of those Andy Dalton, Brian Hoyer vibes, where you can come in, not turn the ball over, play within the structure of the offense, and be a decent leader and win some games. The Steelers wanted Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett didn't want the Steelers.
Touchdowns, though.
He didn't want the Steelers. That's okay. You don't expect that from a backup quarterback anyway, unless you're Mason Rudolph last year, I guess.
Sure, and I'm very happy for Mason Rudolph, and I was kind of surprised. The way that it did a complete 360, because all the reports and all the sources that we have were telling us that it's going to be a Mason Rudolph, Kenny Pickett, but the Steelers just went completely the other way, and this is untraditional, really. But I think that they're hearing, they're just sick of the Mike Tomlin. I'll say this, Mike Tomlin's a great coach. The 17 that it's great, but it's like what is it that we're really trying to accomplish here? No one's taking that away. It's a great, accolade to have, but we have all these former Steelers on here. I forget who said it, who we just had on here recently, and you walk in and you see 6 Lombardis, and you're not, you have to be realistic. These guys live and breathe football. Kenny Pickett wasn't getting it done. I think that they wanted to give Kenny Pickett every chance, but it's how long are you going to hold the guy's hand before you say, hey, best of luck? But it's, and it happened pretty fast. And the whole thing with the Steelers, I thought from the beginning that it was like a marketing, hey, local guy coming in from Pitt, it would have been great to raise Lombardi, Kenny Pickett, Pitt, would have put Pitt even more on the map. But at this point, it's just, I don't care where you come from. If you're a good football player, I want you on the 53-man roster. I don't care if you're coming from a D2 school, Alabama. And that's another thing. All these Steeler fans, with the Tyler Boyd, DeMar Hamlin, great players and stuff, great guys. But it's there's other people out there. Just the homecoming thing for me. I'm trying to win games. I have enough feel-good stories in life, and that's just being brutally honest.
It felt like Kevin Colbert was into that feel-good story vibe. I totally agree with that. And at this point, you can definitely surmise that Kenny Pickett was a bad pick, right? You can say that now officially. And Kevin Colbert, unfortunately, he made a lot of bad picks. So he's not a bust yet. Who knows? He got a lot of career left. He was a bust. But Kevin Colbert made a lot of bad picks, right? Kenny Pickett set this franchise back at least the last couple of years. But you look at guys like Jarvis Jones, Artie Burns, Devin Bush. Kevin Colbert set this franchise back. It wasn't, he gets as much blame as anybody you want to place it on. You could put it on Mike Tomlin, the Rooneys, whomever, but I think Kevin Colbert is a guy, because he's maybe out of the limelight now, who the Steelers are still cleaning up his mess is the best way to put it, I think. And at the end of the day, Omar Khan has given a breath of fresh air to this organization, right? I will post sometimes, write things on Twitter and write things, articles saying, oh, the Steelers could be interested in this player in the draft or this free agent. And I'll have a lot of people attacking me saying, that's not the Steelers' way. They have never drafted somebody with this kind of wingspan. They always draft this kind of player with this wingspan. We don't have evidence of that. This is 1 year of evidence with Omar Khan. We don't know what the hell this new regime is going to do. You don't. You keep throwing out the Steelers' way, right? The Steelers' way is not to bring in Russell Wilson. The Steelers' way is not to sign Patrick Queen or draft somebody with an arm length under whatever it may be, 32 inches. We don't know what the Steelers' way is. We're learning now that Omar Khan's new Steelers' way is not the old way. It is aggressiveness. It is creativity. He is playing chess while a lot of people are playing checkers, baby. And that's just where we're at here with this Kenny Pickett trade.
Yeah, and I think, myself included, I kind of put myself in check and was like, it was like February and I'm just sitting here firing off tweets like, angry and like, we need to make a move. It's going to be the same thing. And like, then I the move started to happen. And I think really when they fired Matt Canada, I was like, okay, like they're like, and then once the offseason officially got here, I was like, okay, wow, they're really serious now. But it's just really setting in, and I kind of just stepped back and said, I'm going to let Omar Khan, cook up in the lab, and I'm just going to sit back in my recliner. And then, going into the season, I'm going to, I feel a little more confident now. I mean, then I really do think this team. I think I said it before, and a lot of people say it. I think this team is a quarterback away from making a legit run. The defense, just adding Patrick Queen, a healthy T.J. Watt, Minka, it's just really this team. We've seen the talent, and I think George Pickens. I think this is going to be his really, we already know the superstar talent's there, but I think statistically this is going to be his breakout. Hey, it's a contract. This I'm going to prove to you what I can do, and we all know what he can do. But I think with a competent quarterback, he's really going to excel, and it's going to be fun to watch. I'll say that.
Yeah, I'm going to touch on two tweets that just came up on my timeline. First one, Ian Rappaport, NFL insider, said Russell Wilson is now the starting quarterback for the Steelers. Rap, I think he probably already knew that. Buddy, Russell Wilson was always the starting quarterback for the Steelers ever since he was reportedly coming to Pittsburgh on Sunday. There was never actually a real debate or quarterback competition that was going to take place, and that was obviously confirmed today with the Kenny Pickett trade. And then this tweet really stuck out to me. This is John Ledyard. He always does a lot of good work. He's over there. He does the Yins No Ball Steelers pod, breaks down draft for SB Nation. He's always been really good. And he mentioned two things that I completely agree with. He said, one, you can believe Kenny Pickett was never going to be the guy and was a bad draft pick, but you can also believe the Steelers did about as bad of a job setting him up to succeed as you can imagine. And both of those things are true. You keep Matt Canada, which, I don't know who he had blackmail on in the Pittsburgh Steelers front office to be there for, 2 years. And then, you don't really address the offensive line until this past season by taking Broderick Jones. So really you have two factors there that don't help out a young quarterback whatsoever. But at the same time, I don't think anybody thought Kenny Pickett's ceiling was all that high, right? At the end of the day, we thought maybe Alex Smith. But the end of the 2020.
Look at that quarterback draft. It was absolutely horrendous. The only person in that draft was Brock Purdy, and that's Mr. Irrelevant. Like no one would have guessed that in a million years.
No, he wasn't even in that draft. He was in last year. It was Malik Willis, Sam Howell, a bad. Desmond Ridder, who I think he just got traded to Arizona as well. Could go down arguably as the worst quarterback class we've ever seen. I think Sam Howell's the best quarterback in that entire class. He just got traded to Seattle. So yeah, consider the fact that 3 quarterbacks from this class just got moved. Ridder, Howell, and now Pickett. And Malik Willis is the 3 in Tennessee because they just signed Mason Rudolph. So another Steelers connection right there. Jordan, if the Steelers knew this was going to happen, which I'm sure they did, they were shopping him. He was disgruntled. They didn't like the way he reacted to that. Why wouldn't they have tried to keep Mason Rudolph and have that conversation with him? Because he knows he's going to be a backup in Tennessee.
I think that, I mean, not necessarily. I mean, I know that with Will Levis, but I mean, I still think that if he goes out there and shows out that it could be a, more of a competition than people think. I don't really know. I mean, Mason was his whole time in Pittsburgh through all the adversity and everything that he's been through. He's handled himself like a professional. I mean, so it's really hard to get a read on, we're not in the meetings behind closed doors, but, maybe the Steelers just want to give him a shot. I really don't know. I mean, I would say probably that Mason Rudolph just was had enough. Like he did the 4-game resume and was like, I'm going to go test the market. I don't know. I really don't know. It still baffles me, to be honest with you. I can't really pinpoint it.
I tweeted that Pittsburgh should now turn around and trade for Justin Fields, which I think they're at least going to try. They've always had interest in him back to the pre-draft process. I'll address 2 of the responses to me. One, Dave Sned said, Fields ain't coming to be a backup. Well, guess what, Dave? I appreciate your engagement, but who wants him in as a starter right now? Just about every quarterback competition is full. Listen, if somebody felt like they were going to be their starting quarterback, they would have traded for him by now because he's been on the market for weeks and weeks. So he would come in to be a backup, knowing that he's playing behind a 36-year-old who might have a relatively short leash. And then Colby Kramer says there's no way the Bears answer the phone when they see a 412 area code. After the Steelers' heist of Chase Claypool for Joey Porter Jr., maybe they have the number blocked, like an ex-girlfriend. Unfollow.
I would hope so.
Unfollow, complete unfollow on the gram, block the number, delete the Facebook. That's something that obviously, Ryan Poles does not love working with the Pittsburgh Steelers, or he does. He just hasn't got the better end of it. That's for sure, man. So yeah, if you guys missed it, appreciate you jumping on. Sick Podcast, Steelers Crazy. Subscribe on YouTube. Follow us at Sick Pod Steelers on Twitter. Kenny Pickett, Pittsburgh Steelers, face of the future, franchise quarterback. He was deemed and coined by the organization 2 years ago when they took him in the first round. Has now been traded to the Philadelphia Eagles for what kind of amounts to scraps? A 22 pick jump in round 3.
Like the bottom of the bag.
Scraps may be an exaggeration.
Yeah, but no, it's an equivalent. Do you know how when you're finishing the chips and are not quite done and you just leave the crumbs in there and then you have to tip the bag?
Always do that. I always do it.
That's where what it was equivalent to. So, and here, this is these guys make millions of dollars and they do great things off the field. And we say it all the time. We're strictly talking on the field play, and you see what you got with Kenny Pickett. As far as the Pittsburgh Steelers career, it was a complete bust. I don't care how many 2-minute he put the Steelers in those predicaments. They should have never been there to begin with. I wish him the best in Philadelphia. I know that was his childhood team growing up, and
it was. Yeah, I saw some pictures of.
I think that's pretty cool.
Jersey. It's a jersey.
I wish him the best, but man, dude, it was like Kenny Pickett, man. Do you remember when the Steelers drafted him? It again didn't seem real. Just like when the Steelers signed Russell Wilson, it didn't seem real until the pen's on the paper. But yeah, man, the Steelers are getting a little cutthroat now, and I love it.
We're playing Madden right now, man.
Wow, that's perfect.
If I would have told you that the Steelers would have acquired Russell Wilson, Patrick Queen, traded Kenny Pickett last offseason at this time, you would have been like, what kind of drugs is this dude taking? Is somebody handed him a decent amount of acid right now? Is he on a different type of mushroom right now? Because I don't know what the heck he is saying. Russell Wilson has a $700 billion contract in Denver, and Patrick Queen plays for the Baltimore Ravens, and Kenny Pickett is the face of the franchise.
And hates tackling Jalen Moore. And shout out to our guy, Jared Bailey. Yeah, that was
shout out to Jalen Warren as well. It is one of the wildest weeks in Pittsburgh sports history. I will. I'll go that far. I will go that far.
Yeah,
because it's the Steelers. It's the Steelers.
And this is, you know how we always say, like we always say it here on the Sick Podcast, Steeler Crazy. Again, make sure you subscribe and shout out to our wonderful sponsor, Steel City Wheelhouse. It's where the bar is set. If you're in the Pittsburgh area, make sure you go there for all your custom auto work. Financing is available, and you can visit them to find out more. It's steelcitywheelhouse.com. So all of our viewers, check. Our guy Jalen Warren goes there. We said it during his show. His car is looking fly, clean. Make sure you get out there to Steel City Wheelhouse, where the bar
also
is.
One of the biggest weeks in Pittsburgh sports history, because Paul Skeens is out there throwing gas, 102, 103.
Woo,
so don't Pens are 5 points out of the playoffs somehow. So.
Yes, and it's just, you said it best, and I think that can sum up this podcast. It feels like it's a Madden game. It's like, you know how like when you draft your own team and you're like trying to, you're in dynasty mode, and I'm going to take Russell Wilson. You have, you're bringing the classics. You're bringing Jerry Rice to be your wide receiver. Who knows?
It'd be nice if the Steelers could do that right now, because that's another elephant in the room, is the fact that, according to my calculations, they only have one wide receiver right now. No offense to Calvin Austin. I think he's a bit more of a gadget guy. I don't see him being an impactful player, moving forward, outside of a few chunk plays here and there and some of everybody's favorite, the end around. But one quarterback, one receiver right now. So not just a Justin Fields trade is potentially in play, but you got to find a third guy too. Drafting somebody, right? Makes sense. They got pick 120, 121. Some guys in that area who could be of interest. Jordan Travis, Michael Pratt, I wrote about him. My guy, Joe Milton, my favorite player of all time. And then, you could also look at some other free agents on the market. I know Ryan Tannehill is going to be talked about a lot as the backup, potentially because of his connection with Arthur Smith. And he kind of fits that Mason Rudolph mold where he's a fine backup. He's not a starter in this league. He's a fine backup. But, man, up next, fix the damn wide receiver position. Because if you're all in now, which they're signaling, 1 year with Russell Wilson, let's go win a Super Bowl, you better have some depth at that position. Imagine if George Pickens gets hurt and you're stuck with a rookie receiver on one side and Calvin Austin on the other. You need two receivers, right? So maybe there's another trade cooking somewhere in the works, because Omar Khan is always cooking up something, isn't he?
Yeah, and it's I'll say this is funny. So I just checked my Twitter. So there's like a bunch, because like people have nothing better to do with their life. So obviously, like when we drafted Kenny Pickett, I'll read some of the tweets. Kenny Pickett will win a Super Bowl before Josh Allen. Kenny Pickett is a rookie. Kenny Pickett is the future. Kenny Pickett.
Own it. You got to own it.
I own it, but it's like, you literally have that much time to go and search my tweets from 2 years ago. I think everyone in Pittsburgh was excited about Kenny Pickett, but you have to be realistic. That's
it's social media at this point.
It's just hilarious.
You can be preaching to the choir.
I wanted Kenny Pickett to succeed. He didn't.
What did Chris Wormley tell us once? I love engaging on Twitter with fans. This shouldn't turn into any type of rant or anything, but there are a lot of people out there who are just in the business to try and get a reaction. So don't even give them a reaction. But
no, it's not. I love it. It's honestly flattering. But we
want Kenny Pickett to succeed. It's easy to think after he played really well towards the end of the 2022 season, that he could develop into something. Right. Remember him going into Baltimore and beating the Ravens in that big Week 18 game where he hit Najee Harris in the back corner for a touchdown. That was the Kenny effing Pickett game, right? You remember Mike Tomlin, Kenny Pickett. At that point in time, it felt like, maybe this guy can develop into something.
Great.
But then don't forget, right? And then what came next? The PP, the perfect preseason. Scored a touchdown on every single drive before last season. Right? You know who's calling plays then, by the way, in that preseason? It's Matt Canada still. Right? So, there's no defensive Matt Canada, but at the same time, he did have a perfect preseason. Now, granted, it's against Falcons backups and things of that nature, but there was a 7 or 8 month stretch where just about every tweet you could find was pro Kenny Pickett. right? There were a lot of guys still that you give credit that said his ceiling is very low. But there were a lot of people who jumped on board. So I think anybody out there that's watching this, if you did jump on board, don't feel like people need to bring up receipts in your face, because there were a lot of people who felt that way and should have felt that way due to how he played at the end of his rookie year, won some games, showed moxie, beat some really good teams, and then had a perfect preseason. Peter Schrager, NFL Network, he's one of the best. He is really good at what he does. He's predicted the Super Bowl winner 4 consecutive years. This preseason, he said Kenny Pickett was going to be his breakout star and an MVP candidate, right? There are others in Pittsburgh who said the same on 93.7 The Fan. So there was never a full-blown sense of, yeah, this guy sucks, right? Kind of like there is now. So wish him the best, but at the end of the day, he played his way out of Pittsburgh and talked his way.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, these could be things that Kenny Pickett regrets one day, and how he handled the whole situation. I mean, obviously, again, it didn't work out for Mason Rudolph, but he did have his time to shine. But you see how Mason Rudolph, and I think that, obviously Mason was there for however many years, but Mason, I think people respected Mason of how he handled himself, and they wanted to win for him. I feel like, I mean, I'm not in the locker room, but I'm just saying from the outside looking in, it kind of feels like Kenny Pickett is a good leader. But, when things go wrong, it's like, everyone's pointing fingers. And as the quarterback, it's the most important position in football, let alone, I would argue, it's one of the most important positions in all of sports. And if you can't command your team and you can't lead that offense, and you don't have everyone on the same page, it doesn't matter. You can have all pros all day. If you don't have the team chemistry and that bond, it's not going to work.
He just had no right to act the way that he did. He had no right to feel like he was owed something by the Pittsburgh Steelers towards the end of last season. The guy threw 13 touchdowns in 26 games. The lowest touchdown percentage per snap, not just in the league, not just Pittsburgh Steelers history, NFL history, right? Think of just how low that is on the totem pole. It's literally as low as you can get. So it's honestly, that reaction played a huge part in him being traded. If not, like I said before, I think Pittsburgh would have wanted to keep him. He's a perfect backup, but they move up 22 spots in the draft. Omar is going to take a shot at Justin Fields. Omar might take a shot at a receiver as well, now that he has a little bit more draft equity and a little bit less of a, what's the right word to use, of a problem in the quarterback room. Maybe a little bit of a weight off his shoulders to make this trade.
Before we end this live podcast, and we again want to appreciate everyone for hanging out with us, make sure you subscribe to Sick Podcast, Steeler Crazy. Tell your friends, family, aunt, uncle, mother-in-law, and don't forget to subscribe. We're not just on YouTube, we're on all major streaming platforms, wherever you listen to your podcast. Go on a road trip, plug us in. Steelers 365 days a week. Where do you see that the Steelers going out and getting a quarterback in free agency, or do you think they're leaning more towards the draft?
I think they could do both. And there are three scenarios that come to mind. The first scenario is Justin Fields. Already touched on that. It makes sense from this perspective. You have a quarterback in Russell Wilson who did sign a 1-year deal. I know he said today he wants to play 7-8 more years. But ultimately, there's still some mystery surrounding how he's going to play, how he's going to mesh with the team, and just how that situation will work out. So having a guy waiting in the wings with a high ceiling who can learn under Russell Wilson, what a pretty damn good guy to learn under, because they do have a similar skill set in terms of their mobility. And so that, I think, is one scenario, moving draft picks. The second name that I see and has good percentage chance of being in Pittsburgh is Ryan Tannehill, because of his connection with Arthur Smith, because he feels like a backup that can come in and win some football games if everything doesn't work out with Russell Wilson. Has some Mason Rudolph qualities to him in that, he's a bit of a gunslinger. He'll come in and fire it around, is confident in Arthur Smith's system. But also at the same time, his job is going to be to just hand the damn football off to Najee and Jalen Warren. And then the third is you do one of those two things and you still draft a quarterback because you need a third guy. If it's Justin Fields, I think you're less likely to draft a quarterback because you already kind of have that young guy waiting in the wings. But if it's Ryan Tannehill, maybe you take a shot in the third, fourth round at a Spencer Rattler, at a guy you like, Jordan Travis potentially, who can heal up and then take over. When Russell Wilson and Ryan Tannehill age out. I like Joe Milton in the 5th or 6th round. I think when you have a luxury pick, why not play with house money a little bit? Yeah, 90% chance he sucks. But that 10% chance that you can fix a guy who can throw a ball 90 yards down the field, Uncle Rico over the mountains, hell yeah, why not have a little bit of fun? And it would be awesome to watch in preseason. So I think those 3 scenarios are the ones to keep an eye out, man.
And my last question, and then one is, we do appreciate everyone hanging out with us. We man, it's been crazy with the free agency, but we do this for you guys. That's what makes it worth it. So it's great that everyone, over 1,000 of you guys were hanging out with us. So we really appreciate it, and we'll be doing this more often. But how long do you actually think that they knew that this was like, Kenny Pickett? What do you think? Like you think they had this in the back of their mind? They were just.
Yep. After the way he acted towards the end of last year, his plan has been set in stone for months. This wasn't reactionary. It wasn't like, hey, we got Russell Wilson, now let's trade Kenny Pickett. I don't think. They were always going to find another quarterback and trade Kenny Pickett because he wasn't happy being the 2 last year. What made anybody think he'd be happy being the 2 this year? They were always going to pursue a guy like Russ, a guy like Justin Fields, a guy like Tannehill, if not, and ship him out of here because, they don't want a quarterback who is clearly disgruntled and maybe has lost some of the locker room. Deontay Johnson's not here anymore, but you saw what he posted last year. He wants Mason to be the guy. George Pickens, whether he has people hacking into his Twitter or not, disliked some shit about Kenny Pickett last year that showed that he might be unhappy as well. And then Kenny threw a bit of a fit in the end of the season last year. I'm sure the Steelers thought the same thing everybody else did. What did this guy do to earn the right to act like Tom Brady right now and act like,
That's my biggest thing. I can get him being upset, but you have nothing of validation to back up. How could you just look at that stat? He's tied for the worst in every statistic category. I think he's actually 34th. I don't know what it was in passer rating or what. So that means that there's people who played a certain amount of games, backups that didn't have that had the games that they needed to qualify to, be in the running for that. So I don't know how.
Yeah, I mean, and I was going to say this as well, that Kenny Pickett kind of made his bed here, right? It's production based. This is not this. It's production based. At the end of the day, this is not. If he's throwing 35 touchdowns and has a bad attitude, I think this conversation might have been a little different. And Russell Wilson obviously isn't brought in, but he made his bed with his production, and I hope that is the overarching, resonating takeaway years from now when we look back at the Kenny Pickett era. And maybe it's less about his attitude, but the fact that he just didn't perform well enough to continue his run at the Steelers' potential face of the future.
Wow, man, completely. This free agency, man, I'm gonna need a power nap here soon. What do you?
Man, what do you mean? We were about to take power naps, and then before you know it, 3:45 on a Friday, Omar Khan decides to wake everybody up. You got people leaving work early, driving home from work, probably on the Parkway right now, that are pulled over to check their Twitter, call their friend, and maybe get rid of their Pickett jersey.
You know how when big Steeler news breaks, everyone's. I'm sure you're probably. I hope you have your phone on Do Not Disturb.
But we got 1.2K people joining us right now, so we we appreciate you, and that speaks to the Pittsburgh Steelers' reach
you
in
guys.
this city, not just this city, across the world. It's Steelers country, Steelers worldwide. Like we've had so many great guests on. Man, I can't even go back and focus on the draft right now. There's still going to be things that are yet to be determined, that's for sure. Wide receiver position, quarterback position, potential center out there, and defensive back, of course, still could use a little bit of retooling, even though they got Deshaun Elliott yesterday, a solid safety who will help provide. But what a day. Russell Wilson is introduced at the podium, talks about just having conversations with Kenny Pickett, talks about how they're excited to grow. I think that was, if I could count, if I had to do a shot for every time Russell Wilson said, what was the quote? That he just wants to focus on growing himself, or his growth. I would be, I'd be 50 shots deep, because I'm already 15 shots deep, and I think he said it 35 times. So, right after that press conference, the Steelers trade Kenny Pickett. So, I don't know. I don't even know if there was a text exchange. I'm not calling Russell Wilson a liar. It probably happened, but maybe it wasn't as warm and fuzzy as he made it seem.
Well, this has been great. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. Make sure, again, you subscribe to our YouTube, The Sick Podcast, Steeler Crazy. We're doing 2 shows a week. We just had Quadri Olson on, who played for. Make sure you go check out that.
It was a good show.
We have a lot of draft, analysts and some draft profiles coming up here. Combine's gone, draft's coming up, OTAs will be here. Before you know it, it will be summer. We'll be back up at St. Vincent, and then it will be fall in Pittsburgh on the North Shore. Get ready.
Think we can get Kenny Pickett on the podcast?
Probably going to go with no now. I don't think he wants to do any. I think that he's
all love, respect.
I do, man. It's just I wanted Kenny Pickett to be successful for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and inevitably it just didn't happen. Again, I'll say this. You see the logo on the hat? The NFL does not care about your feelings, and that's just the harsh reality of it. But, hey, thanks for hanging out with us, Kenny Pickett. We wish you the best. Career stat line, 13 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, 14-10 overall. God bless you. Mike, you have any last words?
Good luck, but good riddance.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Steelers Crazy on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.